I'm Carla Cannon. I homeschool my own 3 kids. My oldest is graduating from her homeschool high school program this spring, and my other 2 are still at home. And I also have the privilege of working with other homeschool families in Central Alberta. Today I'm going to be sharing with you an inside look and a review on Apologia's general science program. This is geared for middle school students in grades 7 to 8, depending on the student. More thoughts on that later. So this is, my son has completed this. He did this in his grade 7 year because his long-term goal is to go into engineering. So my daughter, who's graduating, is going into secondary education with a focus on being a music teacher. So her high school curriculum was much more humanities based, and I knew I was going to have to step up my science game in order for my son to be successful in high school and go on to an engineering program if that's where he ends up. And so I love Apologia, I love their products, and that's kind of the background of what led me to get their general science program. So I went ahead and I bought their super set. There's different packages that you can buy. I bought it directly from the Apologia website, and in the super set, it included everything. Science isn't my passion as much. Like, I love English and writing and all that kind of stuff, and science is not something that I wanted to have to come up with things or topics, and so I really wanted to buy something solid so I didn't have to worry about if I was covering everything in enough depth and all of that. So I bought it all. The super set includes the textbook, which of course you need. That's kind of the foundation of the whole program. And then it comes with the student notebook. This is a pretty beefy book. This is not small. So, but this is also, unless you're just wanting your child to read the textbook, which I'm not sure how much they would get out of it just doing that alone, you definitely need the student notebook. That's really not an optional component of the program. And then the superset also came with the test booklet and solutions manual. So for each module of the, I believe, 14 modules, it ends with a unit test, but prior to doing the unit test, your student can take a practice test, and then there are answers for the practice test, and then there are also answers for the module test, and you can grade them if that's important to you. I used it more as a measure of, is he understanding, than caring more about the grades per se, but it's definitely a useful tool, especially as they're getting older and need to learn some test taking skills. So that was in the superset. And then the part that's expensive, but oh my goodness, oh so worth it for our family, is the thumb drive. So this comes with a thumb drive if you buy the superset, or I think you can buy it on its own as well. And what this is pure gold, my friends, pure gold. No, seriously though, I loved it. This was great. So this is video instruction and lessons by the author of the book for each day, mostly. Sometimes there was 1, sometimes there was 2, rarely was there none. And these were not long. These were, 10 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 13 minutes, another day. So they weren't very long, but it just took some of the more challenging concepts and put it in another format for your child to learn. So, she'd walk through the concept, there'd be graphs, maps, and the very, very best part is the experiments. This book comes with experiments. I think there's, on average, a couple per module. And like I said, I bought it all. I bought the entire kit. I think I got it through christianbook.com. It was a giant box with the supplies for every single experiment because, like I said, in each module that your child does, there's experiments that go with it. And then part of the student notebook is how to properly do a lab, how to do procedure steps, how to do a lab report, and that's great. It's a wonderful skill to have. However, I am going to be perfectly honest with you. We bought this giant expensive set of all the supplies for the science experiments, which is great, easy to use, but we didn't do them because life is busy and there is only so much time in the day. So, like I said, there are the experiments that are within each module, and in the student notebook, there is, it takes them right through, how to go through a lab. There's your purpose, materials, notes you can make, and very, very excellent, clear, graphics and step-by-step instructions. You identify your purpose, you state your materials, hypothesis, procedure. I mean, it is extremely well done. And with purchasing the kit, there was really, we could have done the experiments, but my kids are involved in a lot of things, and it just took more time than I was willing to devote to science. And so with this, my son was able to watch all the experiments. I had him fill out some, but not all of the lab reports, enough that I felt like he was going to be able to do that in high school and beyond and know what it is and know what's expected, but we did not belabor the fact. So I think it's great that Apologia provides both options. If you want to go all in and buy all the stuff and do all the experiments, you can. If you do not want to, then having the option of watching these video lessons and watching the experiment and seeing the results done is equally beneficial in my mind and a huge time saver. So I love that we had that option, and I really highly recommend the video lessons, even though they are expensive. All right, I want to dive in a little bit and look at each of the components of this program. As I mentioned, there are 14 modules, and being general science, it really is an overview of every scientific topic that you could have hit on in elementary, and also prep for as they get older and are going into high school. So I'm not going to go into too much detail. If you click on the link below, it'll take you to the Apologia website, and there's a sample, and it goes over the table. You can look at the table of contents, and it'll give you a really good idea. Like I said, it's in the link, and it'll give you a good idea of all the topics that are covered. But let me just tell you, it is very thorough. It made me feel good. I was like, oh, gee, maybe we didn't do, enough of this or enough of that, or didn't hit on this in elementary school. Don't worry about it. This science program really covers all the topics in a nice amount of information. So that was one of the things that I really like about it. Another thing that I like about it is how well it's laid out and organized. It really is very open and go. My son worked through this very independently. I would help him if he needed it, but for the most part, I did not read the textbook. I would help him find answers, if he got stuck on something, or his dad would, but it was really easy for him to follow and know what he needed to do each day and what was next on the list, because it's all laid out in the student notebook in a lovely schedule. So it's kind of a 4-day-a-week plan, which I like because we only do 4 days a week. On a good week? No, but truly only 4 days a week anyway. And so it tells them, exactly what textbook pages they need to do, what corresponding notebook pages they need to do. And so it really helps them as they're getting into those middle school grades, develop that independence, and just can dive right in and be very independent on it. You always learn things as you go along from older children, and then you can give that to younger children. So my son is my second child, and my daughter, who is just wrapping up high school, I do wish that I would have spent more time teaching her how to take notes before she jumped into high school level courses, being able to read a textbook. And we did lots of living books and, kind of hands-on things when they were younger. So we haven't done a lot of textbooks. It was somewhat newer skill in our house. And so the skill of being able to read a textbook, take notes and retain information, I mean, it's a skill that kids have to learn. It is not something that they just jump into without any instruction. So it was something I should have done a little bit more with my oldest, but Apologia really takes care of that right within the science program. So at the beginning of each module, they have a section on note-taking skills, and they really set kids up for success. They give them tips, things to do, things to look for, but it's very, they kind of hold their hand through the notebook. So, it gives them things like vocabulary that they need to find and define. There are nice charts and graphics that they can do. It's very, colorful. It's nice to look at. It's not dull, and it helps them learn to read, to retain information. And so without having to be, geez, what do I write down? What do I need to remember? It kind of guides them through that. So it asks questions, there's diagrams, and like I said, in the schedule, it tells them exactly what pages they need to read in the textbook, what pages correspond in the student notebook, and then when you buy the thumb drive, you can print out a document that says what videos correspond with that lesson for that day. Another thing that, in addition to the note-taking skills, is test-taking skills. Again, my eldest hadn't done a lot of tests prior to going into her high school classes that she took mostly online from home. And so that was another thing that I wanted my son to have an earlier exposure to. So at the end of every module, within the student notebook is a kind of a study guide, and that one is open book, so they can go through their notes, go through the textbook, and really kind of self-check if they understand things, and then I would grade it. It comes, you'll want the answer key for that. And so then I would grade it and talk about, anything that was unclear. And then the final test was very similar to the practice test. And then that one we did as closed book. And so, what did he know? And by doing the practice test and the notebook pages, it was great preparation for how to take a test and be successful. One of the questions I had when I was deciding whether this program would be a good fit for my family or not is how much time did it really take? And I'm going to tell you, this was not a light program for us. It took a good, at least an hour of time, if not more. So just to give you an idea of kind of what a typical day could look like, this was the student notebook. So like I said, there's kind of the overall schedule, and then right within the student notebook, it tells you what to do that day. So this was the chemistry unit. So this page, and this were the notebooking pages based on page 223 to 225 of the textbook. So my son read this page here, all of those, and all of that, and just the top bit of this page. So it takes some time. Prepare yourself. If you haven't done a lot of textbooks, it takes some time. Writing the answers, watching the videos, doing it well so that they understand it is a time commitment. But I have a couple tips that worked well for us. When we started out, science covered, I had to think about what is our goal. Well, my goal was that obviously he learned science, but my other goals were that he could read for information, take notes, and answer the comprehension questions within it in complete sentences. So it wasn't just science, but I had some pretty big language arts goals written in there, and some of these lessons do include a fair bit of writing. So when I had defined my goals for my son, I realized if I wanted him to do all of this with science, we had to set language arts aside for a bit. He still did a little bit of grammar and a little bit of spelling, that kind of stuff. But as far as doing like an actual writing program at the same time, when we did this science program, he didn't. From September till the end of December, his writing was doing science. And I have found this for us and other families that I've worked with that use this program. That was a way to be successful in it because it does take a lot of time, but then he wasn't so overwhelmed with it. I could say, okay, do the questions, answer in complete sentences, make sure you're doing a good job. And then he'd do it knowing that that counted for his writing for that day as well. And it made it manageable. So that was how we approached it. You have to do what works for you. Maybe your child can do all the things and it works for them. But if this looks like a heavy curriculum to you, that approach worked really well. And it took a long time at the beginning. He's like, wow, Mom, this takes a long time and it's hard. But as he got in the groove and got more familiar with it, come about January, we did start adding in some writing things. And because he could just get through it faster, he developed strategies. And so, if you're finding yourself in a similar situation, then that's one approach that I could suggest. The other thing, too, is that you could do is if your child is getting bogged down by the writing and your goal isn't that the writing be part of their science as much, you can have them answer some of the questions orally. And we did that, too, especially the second half of the year when I'd added a little bit more writing stuff to his day. Sometimes he knew it, and it was just to take the time to write it all out when you're a 12-year-old boy, it was a lot. So sometimes he's like, Mom, I know it. Can I just tell you? And I would write right in his notebook, done orally. So just a tip. There are these on your own questions. The on your own questions have answers to them within the textbook. So I didn't want him to look at the answers. I would have him write those and then we'd look at the answers together. The one thing that I do wish I'd known about the student notebook before I got into the program is that while the on your own questions do indeed have the answers in the textbook, the rest of the notebook pages do not have answers. I talked to Apologia about this, and their theory was that, well, the notebooks are personal to your student, so there could be varying answers, and that's true to a degree, but I really wish there was an answer key for the notebook because some things were very clearly right or wrong and not dependent on the student. So something like this and like this, I wish there was an answer key that I could have easily found the answer to, because if he got stuck, the only way we could find the answer was going back through the textbook together. And it did improve his skill of, scanning for information. And we talked about some, how that's a skill all in its own. But it was a little time consuming on my end of things if he got stuck, where to find it and how to help him through that. Overall, I really love this program. I'm so happy that we invested in it. My son learned a ton, and I felt really good, not only with the science knowledge that he took away from it, but the study skills, the note-taking skills, the answering questions. All of that, I really was pleased with it. I think the textbook is engaging and really well done. It was easy to understand. There's lots of nice pictures, and it was just enjoyable for him. Overall, he found it really interesting and liked the topics, liked the variety of topics. I liked that it helped him, by being a general science course and having so many topics that it covered, it really helped him kind of zero in on, hey, biology isn't as fascinating to me, but chemistry, he really liked the chemistry unit and thought that was interesting. So I think it's great in the middle school ages to kind of help your child say, hey, which of these areas are you more interested in? Because I know in Alberta, Canada anyways, you can pick, my daughter only needed to do biology and didn't need chem and physics. And so that kind of helps them zero in on what it is they're interested in. The other thing that I loved is just how well it was laid out, how open and go it was, how he could develop those independent skills. And so I think that's great for this age category. And it really is a nice stepping stone as far as the difficulty of the text, the difficulty of the notebooking pages. It really nicely bridges the gap between middle school and what is expected of a student in high school. He did this when he was during his grade 7 year. He was 12, and so it was definitely at the upper limit as far as challenge-wise for him. And then we would have gone on and continued with the Exploring Creation with Physical Science, but it got some mixed reviews. But I am excited to say that they are coming out with a 4th edition of the Physical Science. So had they had it this year that we are doing school, then I would have done that with him, but we went a different direction in order to prepare him for high school science. But I think it's definitely worth checking out that 4th edition physical science book. The review that I'm doing on this one is the 3rd edition general science, and it was excellent. So comment if you have any questions below, and I hope this gave you some ideas for whether this would be a good fit for your family or not. Bye-bye.